Share. All right, we're back, everybody. We are COMP397 in the fall 2018 semester. It's week 11, part 1 of our broadcast, and it's, of course, we're at Centennial College talking about web game programming. Today we're going to be talking about animation with sprites. Yay! Okay, what did we work on last time? So last time we were working on a, let's look at the desktop. Actually, what I'll do is I'll make a copy of the files that we were working on. It's like last time. I like to do this a lot of times because of we can keep everything clean and separate, not because there's no other way to do it. So copy, and we'll just paste it in there. And we've done this every time, so this is nothing new. All right, let's look at this as lesson 11. So lesson 11, we're really focusing. Last week we focused on input. It was more input handling than anything else last week, and we needed to do that. We need to kind of talk about the controller. What happens when we use a controller? How do we use keyboards? Keyboard input. What about if I just want to use the mouse and so on? I can do all those things. And what we did was we added to the input manager. That's what we kind of did last week. So a couple things I'm going to change this time around. Again, like we normally do, is this is lesson 11. So that's what we're doing. We also want to change the package.json file for completeness. And this is really all around animation. Make this level lesson 11. I'm just changing the minor things we need to kind of make things go. The other thing is that I usually kill my git.git folder, or get rid of my my remote. So I'll say git remote remove origin, and then I'll say I need to create a new Git repository for this lesson. So we'll go into GitHub, and we'll do Centennial. What we'll do with Centennial this time around is we'll go into make a new one. COMP397 in the fall 2018 semester, and it's lesson 11. There we go. Okay, and we'll just grab these last 2 lines of code, and we'll copy and paste it. And that should do. Cool, so everything's up online. You can see that the whole project is about 2 megs. Like this whole stuff we've been working on this whole semester, 2 megabytes, guys. Like it's so small, it's like tiny. And this is why it's really cool to do this kind of stuff. Here, I'm gonna press Control-Shift-B to start off my transpiling and my watch task. And then what I wanna do is, I'm gonna use the terminal window to start our light server like we normally did. So where do we leave off? We have some controls. I can move with mouse and keyboard now. I can fire with my left mouse button. We're pretty cool here. This is where we left off. I can destroy my planes, and I have sounds going and stuff. Now, the one thing that I'm going to tell you about is that everything looks pretty bad, right? Like when I, beat up my plane, I mean, I really don't get any kind of effects. I want to have an explosion happening. I want my plane, the plane itself, my player to have some kind of propeller or something like that. That'd be really nice going. And maybe something else to pick up off of the island, like a coin would be nice. Instead of some picking up coins or mail or whatever it's going to be. It's not coin pilot, it's mail pilot. I don't know. But it would be nice. And also, maybe the last change I'd like to make, maybe next week if we have time really quickly, is to do a custom font. All right, so yeah, that's pretty cool. That's what I want to do. But in order for us to get animations going, we have to modify some stuff. One thing is, inside of our scripts file, we have in our core folder, in our core.game.ts file, we have all this stuff. And in order for us to get animations going, we want to create a sprite sheet to make all this work. Now, this is not the only way you can do it. I mean, you can create sprite sheets on the fly with Create.js. But let's take a look at the Sprite class for a second. Let's just do some documentation, API stuff, right? So I'm going to go easel.js. docs, and we're going to get into the, I'll turn the lights down in a few minutes when we start getting right into it. But I want to talk about this because if you look at Sprite Sheet, there's three different things on Sprite Sheet. There's Sprite Sheet Builder, Sprite Sheet Tools, Sprite Sheet Utils. Let's look at Sprite. So Sprite is what we want. We want to create this Sprite, and what sprites are, remember that Create.js came from the old Flash framework, right? That's where it came from. I don't, so you can shake your head with Flash, but Flash was a mainstay for computer animation back in the day, motion graphics, all that kind of stuff. And of course, it was killed off, right? So now there's no more Flash. There's something called Animate CC, which doesn't use Flash. It uses some other things. It can do Flash if you want, but most of the time we do things with Create.js. So actually, Animate CC exports to Create.js for animations, which is kind of cool. But one thing that was left over is this idea that we want to be able to play or stop the animation, right? So each sprite, by default, has an animation state, even if it's only one frame. So for those sprites that are not going to have multi-frame animations, it's just going to keep on showing the same frame over and over again. And Create.js in the back end has optimized this so that you only see the only frame that you need to. Okay? There's a couple of different methods that are tied into sprites. One of them is go to and stop. Another one is go to and play. Typically, we don't need to do these things unless you want to rewind an animation or you have a multi-state animation. For example, if I have a player and the player has a run state, an idle state, the player has a attack state, a die state, all these different states for the player object, then you can have a longer animation and you can play bits of that animation, whether he's idle or running or walking or attacking or dying or whatever he's going to do, by going and using go to and play. Go to and play. Allows you to play only that strip of animation, and we can stop it after X number of frames. So it's kind of cool. That's one thing you can do with the animation sets that they come with. However, everything must be a sprite in order for you to use a sprite sheet. Now, other things. We have this Sprite Sheet class, and the Sprite Sheet class is a container class that contains multiple sprite sheets, sprites. And this is, notice that we have each animation has a number of frames, right? So these are all the frames in the sprite sheet. Think about it as a texture map. A sprite sheet is not just a sprite sheet, it's a texture map. So you have several textures, CG, or that's computer graphics for images. Images are just textures. You have a bunch of textures inside of one big image, one big file, and that file is called a texture map. Bunch of textures in a big file, sprite sheet, also called a texture map, and we need coordinates where each texture exists. And this is frame 0, this is frame 1. You can see that these are different coordinates for different objects, and we're going to kind of come into that. And they also give you some examples of what the code would look like, run, jump, and so on. But you really need to know quite a bit of information about where the frame is, where does it exist on the texture map, and so on. So for this, I prefer to use a great tool. I know people don't like this when I do it, called Texture Packer. So this is something that we're moving out. Texture Packer is a great tool. You can download it and install it. Ooh, they have Cyber Weekend, 50% off on Texture Packer. I think it's totally worth it, guys. This is the great time to buy Texture Packer. If you're ever going to do 2D games and you want to make your life easy, then use Texture Packer, okay? What the heck is Texture Packer? Well, it looks like this, all right? So typically, and I know it's going to ask me to upgrade. It always does. This is a free upgrade. Yeah, I'll do it later. So what it is you have a bunch of sprites that you list on the left-hand side, and what you can do is when you add sprites on the left, it packs them for you into a sprite sheet, and then you can actually export 2 files, the completed sprite sheet itself plus a map. The map file is in JSON format or in XML or whatever you want. There's different formats here. And what it does is it allows you to point to where on the sprite sheet or texture map each sprite is located, okay? And when we have that information, we can import that into Create.js, and we can make our Create.js point to those locations. Okay, however, this is not free. This is not free. There is a, I think, a 7-day trial. It used to be 30 days. When I first started using Texture Packer, it was 30 days you had to figure it out. You can almost make a little game with it at the time. Nowadays, you have 7 days to use Texture Packer. And this is okay. I would recommend downloading it and trying it. I believe if you go to the store now, let's look at the Cyber Monday purchase prices for this stuff. By itself, Texture Packer is $54.99 Canadian. I still think this is fantastic, a really great deal for what you get. It's a tool. It's an awesome tool, and I think it's worth downloading and using. Okay, that's me. That's my personal thing. Now, if you don't want to use it, that's fine. But there is, like I said, some kind of 7-day trial you can use to try it out. I recommend downloading it and trying it out, and you're going to see why in a second. All right, so I've got my Texture Packer working, and I want to create a sprite sheet so I can employ animation. So how do I do this? Well, one thing to note is that I've got to go to my where I am. So this is COMP397, F2018, lesson 11. And inside there, I have some assets. I've included some additional assets for you guys so you can do different animations. One is my plane. I have plane 1, plane 2, and plane 3. Let's add them in. So I'll say plane 1, plane 2, and plane 3. I'm going to drag and drop them over here. And you can see now that it's starting to create the sprite sheet. Take a look. So here's my sprite sheet. Well, great thing is also that I can select all these 3 things, and it actually does an animation preview of what this looks like. So you can see it's kind of moving very slowly. I can also increase the speed, so I can check out what the right speed is. I know it's kind of hard to see this, but you can see that the plane is actually animating its propellers. Let me just turn the lights off so you can see it. So actually, what's really happening here, I know it's hard to see, but what's really happening here is it's frame flipping. It's going from the first plane to the second plane to the third plane, and it keeps on repeating over and over again. So that's this animation here. So that's the plane animation, and you can see that there's three little frames here, frame 1, 2, 3. I also want the other stuff. Right, so I can pack my sprite sheet with everything else. So here's my bullet. Let's add my bullet. I'm going to add my cloud. I'm going to add my enemy, and notice that my enemy has 3 states because it has propellers as well. So say 1, 2, 3. Pack this and put them in there. I also have my island. I have my ocean. I'm not going to use. I'm going to talk about that in a second. I have my restart and my start button, and I also have some explosions. I think I got everything. Cloud, island, plane. I don't have ocean. And I have my coin. Let's add the coin in there too. Why not? Might as well add it all in. So that way you have all these parts. By the way, you have all this. If you download my stuff from GitHub, you have all this stuff. And I can drag and drop this stuff into here too. There it is. And you can see what it does is it creates all the sprites in one sprite sheet. Okay, that's what it does. I also want an explosion, and I think I like this big explosion. I think I want to use this one this round. So I'm going to kind of grab all these explosions and put them in there too. There we go. So we got explosions, we got stuff, we got everything, and it's pretty cool. Let's look at the outlines of where everything is, just to see that. Notice it says on the right here, it says, I want to export to easel.js or create.js, all right? Now, there's 2 parts to this export part. One is a data file, which is a JSON file. The other one is a texture file, which is usually a PNG, all right, when I create my object. Now, here's what I recommend, guys. If you don't want to use Texture Packer, wait until I've done everything and download everything from GitHub, and then I can show you how it all works. So again, notice that this is the case here. I want to go to Advanced Settings. Under Advanced Settings, it tells me the maximum size of my layout, 2048 by 2048. If I was to add in my ocean, guys, this would be very bad. Okay, right now it's 500K. It says 84.8% overdraw, 2 triangles, and a sprite. Okay, that's what it looks like. And so there's some things that we're going to have trouble because there's so much to pack in here. I can also increase the size of my sprite sheet by going bigger. Let's say if I wanted to make a 4K sprite sheet, I could certainly do that by moving to 4096 by 4096. That's the maximum I want to make it. Let's say max size. Size constraints. It says any size. I could specify power of 2, which I highly recommend. Power of 2 is really much better for computer programs to read. Power of 2. I can also force it squared, which gives me a lot more empty space if I really wanted to. Okay. I could also include my ocean here, but the problem with the ocean is it takes up a lot more space. Remember, it's 1440 by 640 by 1440, right? And 1440, my friends, if you think about this, is really big, right? It's like very, very big, right? And so that's probably bigger than it would. We'd have a lot more wasted space. And let me show you this, what I'm talking about. Could I do it? Yes. Should I do it? I'm not sure. And here's what it looks like when I put the ocean in. Okay, there it is, ocean. And now we see how much space is being lost. You understand? It creates something that's weird. Now, part of it is because of my settings. If I took away power of 2 and I said any size, then we still have some space lost, but we have this space lost on this side. If I went to word aligned, right, again, you'd have something like this. Again, this is the maximum size of my image. I also go to an 8 meg image, 8 megs to include the ocean, guys. 8 megs. It's huge. If I take the ocean away, though, watch this. Take the ocean away, now it becomes 5K, 500 kilobytes, 512. And if I go back to power of 2, as an example, and force square, if I don't force square, literally it'll be like 512 kilobytes. That's good. That's a way better solution than having a sprite sheet that has 8 megabytes, and most of it is empty. Most of it is empty because it can't fit the ocean. It just doesn't work, right? It's just a large image. So for large images like that, I recommend, especially background images, load them in separately. You can still make them sprites if you really want to, right? It's just that they got to be loaded separately in the object. Other options. Here's my scale. I can do the scaling if I really want to. I don't recommend this. Algorithm is max rex. All right. Again, there's 3 different ones. Rectangle-based packing algorithm. Use the best texture space. Heuristics is best and pack. You want to pack it the best way you can. You can also make it good or fast. This just does what the kind of packing algorithm it uses. Multi-pack is something else where it changes some of the order of sprites. Detect identical sprites. That's really important. Trim. Sometimes what I want to do is add margin. If you notice, there's a bit of separation between some of the sprites and the others, right? So here's my trim, my alpha threshold, and so on. I could also add a border padding for each of these things, which also changes the size of my sprite sheet when I do that. So I can, if I reduce that, then there's no border padding. It starts right at the corners, right? So this is the kind of stuff that I wanted to talk about. Normal maps, if I'm going to have normal maps, I could pack them with the same size. But notice that there is no normal map that is generated right now, right? And maybe, again, you don't know what the normal map is. I'd have to specify what the sprite sheet file is in a second, and I will. Bear with me while I do that. All right, so there's a couple things. Let's go back.